When we talk about relationships, one of the most underestimated qualities a man can bring into a woman's life is consistency. Think about it. Anyone can make a promise in the heat of the moment. Anyone can show up once or twice when it's convenient. But consistency is not about convenience, it's about character. A woman remembers the man who didn't just show up when it was easy, but when it was hard. The man who made time when there was no time, who stayed steady even when storms rolled through. That kind of reliability doesn't just create comfort. It builds emotional security, a foundation so strong that it becomes unforgettable. Women aren't looking for perfection. They know you're human, they know you'll make mistakes, they know you'll stumble. What they can't forget is the man who, even after stumbling, still comes back, still shows up, still follows through on his word. Because consistency is proof of intention, it's the bridge between words and actions. And when a woman sees a man whose actions repeatedly confirm his words, she doesn't just feel loved, she feels safe. And safety, in the deepest emotional sense, is not a small thing. It's everything. You see, inconsistency breeds doubt. It plants uncertainty. A woman who cannot count on a man is left constantly questioning, will he be here tomorrow? Will he mean what he says today? Will he still care when it's inconvenient? That doubt corrodes trust, but consistency erases it. It tells her without needing words, you can rely on me, I'm not going anywhere. And that assurance, repeated over time, becomes etched into memory. She won't forget it because she can't. It shaped her experience of love. Consistency is not grand gestures once in a while. It's the small, everyday choices. It's the text to check in, the genuine listening when she speaks, the remembering of the details she thought you forgot. It's the pattern of being there, of showing up, even in the unnoticed moments. That's what lingers in her heart long after. She may forget the fancy dinner or the extravagant gift, but she won't forget the steady presence that carried her through the difficult days. And let's not overlook this. Consistency is not only for her, it's for you too. A consistent man becomes trustworthy not just in relationships, but in life. His habits, his discipline, his reliability, those are the things that make him respected. Women feel it, but the world feels it too. Consistency is the foundation of a man who has ordered his life, who has integrated responsibility with care, who has chosen to be dependable because he understands the weight of his word. There is something deeply admirable about a man who is the same in the shadows as he is in the spotlight, who doesn't need recognition to keep doing what's right. That kind of man is remembered because he gave stability in a world filled with chaos. And women don't forget that, because it speaks to something eternal in them, a longing for safety, for trust, for the security of knowing love won't disappear when life gets difficult. So if you want to be the kind of man who cannot be forgotten, stop chasing temporary highs and start building lasting patterns. Be reliable in the small things, consistent in the daily moments, steady in the storms. Because in the end, it's not the dramatic gestures that last in memory. It's the consistency that built emotional security. That is what stays, that is what echoes, and that is what she will never forget. Respect is one of those words that people throw around so often that it almost loses its weight. But when you really think about it, respect is not just a concept, it's a lived experience. It's not something you declare, it's something you demonstrate. And for a woman, respect is unforgettable because it tells her, on the deepest level, that she is valued as she is. When a man respects a woman, he isn't trying to mold her into something convenient for him. He isn't dismissing her voice when it challenges his. He isn't ignoring her boundaries when they make him uncomfortable. He is saying through his actions, you matter. Your thoughts, your feelings, your limits, your dreams, these all have weight in my life. Think about the opposite for a moment. When respect is absent, a woman feels unseen. She feels like an accessory rather than a partner, like her role is to fit into someone else's expectations instead of being recognized for who she truly is. That experience cuts deeply, and it leaves scars that don't fade quickly. But the opposite is also true. When a man shows consistent respect, when he listens without interrupting, when he validates without needing to agree, when he treats her choices with dignity, those moments become imprinted in her memory. They stand out not because they are flashy, but because they are rare. Respect shows itself in the smallest details. It's in the way you look at her when she's speaking, not glancing at your phone, not waiting impatiently for your turn to talk. It's in the way you argue, not by raising your voice to dominate, but by engaging with her perspective as though it's worth considering, even if you disagree. Respect is not about never disagreeing. It's about never demeaning, and women remember the man who understood that difference. Respect also means honoring her individuality. Too many men make the mistake of thinking love means possession. But love without respect turns into control, and control eventually suffocates both people. A man who respects a woman encourages her independence, supports her ambitions, and celebrates her successes instead of feeling threatened by them. That's the kind of man she never forgets because he helped her become more of herself, not less. There's another layer to this. Respect is not just what you give when things are easy. It's how you act when emotions are high, when you're tired, when you're frustrated. Anyone can be respectful in the calm moments, but the man who can remain respectful when he's angry, when he feels challenged, when his ego wants to flare, that man stands apart. Because he proves that his respect is not conditional. It's a principle, not a performance, and let's be clear, respect doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean a man has no boundaries of his own, or that he suppresses his voice to keep the peace. Real respect goes both ways. It's about creating a space where two people can stand as equals, even with their differences, even with their flaws. That kind of mutual recognition is rare, and when a woman finds it, it's not something she forgets. What makes respect unforgettable is that it gives dignity. It elevates her instead of diminishing her. It tells her she's worthy, not because she meets some condition, but because her humanity deserves it. And in a world that often treats people as disposable, that kind of consistent respect is like oxygen. It's necessary, it's life-giving, and once she experiences it, she won't forget where it came from. If you want to be remembered, if you want to leave a lasting imprint, respect the woman in your life in every form, through your words, through your actions, through the way you carry yourself when no one is watching. Because respect is not just something she will notice in the moment. It's something she will carry with her, etched into her memory for the rest of her life. Kindness has a way of reaching into the human soul that few other things can. It isn't about grand displays or public recognition, and it certainly isn't about doing something so you'll get something back. Real kindness is quiet, it's genuine, it's born out of thoughtfulness. And here's the thing, women never forget the man who makes kindness a natural part of how he shows up. Not the kind of kindness that feels calculated or transactional, but the kind that flows out of his character, the kind that reveals his heart without needing words. A woman remembers the man who notices the small things, the man who sees when she's had a long day and brings her a cup of tea without being asked, the man who pays attention to details she thought went unnoticed, like remembering her favorite book or the way she takes her coffee. Those gestures might look small from the outside, but to her they mean something enormous. They say, I care enough to pay attention. I value you enough to remember. That kind of kindness lodges itself into memory. What makes kindness so powerful is that it isn't about resources, it's about awareness. It's not measured in money or material things, but in presence. A gentle word at the right time, encouragement when doubt sets in, patience when frustration could have taken over. Those are the acts that remain imprinted long after. Because when you think about it, life is full of moments where someone can choose to respond with irritation, with indifference, or with kindness. And a man who consistently chooses kindness sets himself apart. This doesn't mean being weak. It doesn't mean you never challenge her or that you avoid speaking hard truths. Kindness and honesty are not enemies. In fact, sometimes the kindest thing you can do is tell the truth, but do it in a way that doesn't tear her down. It's the balance of strength with gentleness, truth with compassion, that makes kindness unforgettable. Women, remember the man who could correct without humiliating, who could disagree without degrading, who could stand firm without crushing. That's the mark of maturity, and it's the essence of real kindness. There's another important layer. Kindness has to be consistent, not selective. If a man is only kind when it benefits him, or only when the world is watching, that's not kindness, it's performance. Real kindness is shown in the unseen moments, in the ways he treats the server at the restaurant, the stranger on the street, the people who can offer him nothing in return. A woman notices those things. She pays attention to how you treat others, and she will never forget if your kindness is sincere or just a mask. And let's not forget that kindness isn't always about doing something. Sometimes it's about restraint. It's the choice to hold back a harsh word, to stay patient when your instinct is to lash out, to listen when it would be easier to dismiss. That kind of self-control is also kindness, and it carries just as much weight as active gestures. A man who can embody this, who can choose gentleness over aggression, patience over impulsiveness, compassion over selfishness, is a man who leaves a lasting impression. What makes genuine kindness unforgettable is that it touches something timeless. It doesn't fade with circumstance. It isn't dependent on mood or convenience. It's an expression of who you are, and when a woman experiences it repeatedly, not just once, she remembers it with a clarity that doesn't fade. Because deep down, kindness is a form of love in action, and love in action is what leaves marks on the soul. So don't underestimate the power of small, consistent kindness. It may not get applause, it may not seem like much in the moment, but those quiet, thoughtful gestures, those words spoken with care, those choices to lift up instead of tear down, those are the things that women never forget. They're the things that echo in her memory long after everything else fades. And in the end, it is often the kindness of a man that defines the legacy of how he is remembered. There is something unforgettable about a man who carries both strength and gentleness in the same frame. Strength on its own can be intimidating, even oppressive. Gentleness on its own can feel fragile, unable to hold up under pressure. But when the two are paired together, when a man can stand tall in the face of challenges yet soften his voice in the quiet moments, he creates an experience that women never forget. Because it speaks to balance, to wholeness, to the kind of grounded masculinity that offers protection without domination, and care without weakness. A woman remembers the man who is strong enough to shoulder responsibility, to make the hard choices, to hold steady when everything around him feels unstable. She remembers the man who can face difficulty without collapsing, who can endure pressure without lashing out. That strength gives her something to lean on, a kind of anchor in a world that so often feels unpredictable. And yet, if all she sees is strength without softness, it becomes hard, cold, even unapproachable. What makes it unforgettable is when that same man who can hold the weight of the world can also hold her hand with tenderness, listen with patience, and comfort her without judgment. It's easy to confuse gentleness with weakness, but real gentleness is nothing like weakness. It takes far more strength to stay calm than to explode, to be patient rather than impulsive, to offer reassurance when frustration feels easier. Gentleness is the control of strength. It's knowing that you have the capacity to break, but choosing instead to build. A woman never forgets the man who uses his strength not to intimidate, but to protect, not to dominate, but to nurture. That combination makes her feel both safe and valued at the same time, and that is rare. When you think about it, the moments that matter most are often the small ones. She may not remember every success you've had or every challenge you've overcome, but she will remember how you treated her when she was vulnerable. She will remember if you chose to listen instead of dismiss, to embrace instead of criticize, to encourage instead of belittle. That is strength paired with gentleness, and those moments, though quiet, leave permanent marks on her memory. Strength without gentleness can be cruel. Gentleness without strength can be ineffective. But the union of the two is what creates trust. It tells her, here is a man who can carry burdens, who can stand tall, but who will never crush me under the weight of his presence. Here is a man who can face life's storms, but who also knows how to bring warmth into the home. That paradox is what makes him unforgettable. There is also an element of respect in this balance. When a man tempers his strength with gentleness, he is signaling that he respects the people around him enough to control his power. He respects himself enough not to lose control, and he respects her enough to ensure his presence is always a source of safety rather than fear. That kind of discipline, that conscious pairing of firmness with care, is something a woman can feel deeply, even if she cannot put it into words. And once she has experienced it, it is something she will remember for the rest of her life. So, if you want to leave a lasting mark, don't think it's one or the other. Don't believe you have to be all strength and no softness, or all gentleness and no spine. The unforgettable man is the one who has both, the one who knows when to stand firm and when to kneel beside, when to fight battles and when to simply hold close. Because at the end of the day, it is not just raw power that women remember, nor is it mere softness. It is the man who embodied both, who carried strength in his shoulders and gentleness in his heart. That is the man she never forgets. Integrity is one of those qualities that doesn't make noise, but it echoes through everything a man does. It isn't about being perfect, because no one is. It's about being true, even when no one is watching. And that kind of integrity is unforgettable. A woman may admire your charm, she may appreciate your strength, she may even enjoy your wit, but what she will never forget is the man whose word carried weight, whose actions aligned with his principles, and whose character didn't shift depending on who was in the room. Integrity is the quiet assurance that what you say and what you do will line up. It means promises aren't empty, commitments aren't fragile, and loyalty isn't conditional. Women remember the man who lived this way because he gave them something that's rare in this world: certainty. Certainty that he could be trusted. Certainty that his values weren't negotiable just because it was easier to compromise. That kind of consistency in character builds a trust so deep it lingers for a lifetime. Think about what happens in the absence of integrity. Distrust creeps in. Words lose meaning. A woman begins to question not just the promises made, but the person behind them. And doubt is corrosive. It erodes safety. It erodes love. It erodes the foundation of the relationship. But when integrity is present, when it shows up in the little things and the big ones, doubt has no room to take root. She doesn't forget that, because it becomes the framework on which her sense of security rests. Integrity doesn't mean you never fail. It means when you fail, you own it. You don't hide, you don't make excuses, you don't shift blame. You acknowledge it, and then you do better. That honesty, that refusal to pretend, is unforgettable. A woman will always remember the man who had the humility to admit mistakes and the courage to correct them. Because integrity isn't about perfection, it's about truth. And truth, when lived consistently, is one of the rarest and most powerful things anyone can experience. Integrity also shows up in the way a man treats others, especially when there's nothing to gain. How do you treat people who can't benefit you, who have no power over you, who can't elevate your status? Women notice these things. They notice how you handle temptation, how you respond under pressure, how you behave when shortcuts present themselves. They notice if you hold to your principles, even when bending them would make life easier. And those observations lodge themselves in memory, because they reveal who you truly are. The man with unwavering integrity becomes a source of stability. He doesn't sway with the winds of convenience, he doesn't betray his values in the shadows, and he doesn't say one thing and do another. That stability allows a woman to trust deeply because she knows his character is not conditional. She knows his word doesn't change with circumstance. That sense of security is unforgettable because it's so rare, and let's be clear. Integrity isn't just about how you treat her, it's about how you live your entire life. It's about how you carry yourself in your career, with your friends, with your family, with strangers. A man who builds his life on truth and responsibility leaves an imprint not just on the woman who loves him, but on everyone who crosses his path. He becomes remembered because he lived in alignment with something greater than convenience. He lived with principle. At the end of the day, women don't forget the man who had unwavering integrity, because it gave them the freedom to trust without fear. It showed them they were with someone whose character wouldn't collapse under pressure, and that is something so profound, so rare, that it cannot be erased from memory. In a world full of shifting loyalties and broken promises, the man who lives with integrity is the man who is never forgotten. At the heart of every lasting relationship lies one simple truth. People don't forget how you made them feel, and for a woman, what she never forgets is the man who made her feel truly valued and deeply loved. Not in a shallow, temporary sense, not through fleeting words without weight, but through a steady demonstration that she matters, not just as a partner, not just in moments of romance, but as a human being whose presence carries significance. When a woman feels valued, it changes everything. It gives her confidence. It strengthens her spirit. It creates a bond that goes far beyond attraction or chemistry. A man who makes her feel valued doesn't just tell her she's important, he shows her. He shows her by listening when she speaks, by remembering what matters to her, by making space for her dreams, and by affirming her worth even when the world tries to diminish it. Those small affirmations accumulate, and they leave an imprint so deep that it stays with her for a lifetime. Love, in its truest form, is not a performance. It's not about flowers when things are good or apologies when things are bad. It's about the day-to-day choices to communicate, to support, to cherish. It's about making her feel like she is not just an addition to your life, but a vital part of it. And women never forget the man who gave them that sense of belonging, that assurance that they were seen not as replaceable, but as irreplaceable. There's a subtle distinction here that matters. To value someone isn't the same as idolizing them. Idolization places a person on a pedestal, but eventually pedestals crumble. To value someone is to recognize their humanity fully, their strengths and flaws alike, and to still choose to honor them. That kind of love isn't fragile. It's grounded, it's stable, and it endures. A woman doesn't forget the man who made her feel valued in that way, because it meant she was loved not for what she could offer, but for who she was at her core. And love, when paired with value, becomes transformative. It's not expressed only in words, though words matter. It's also expressed in action. It's there in the encouragement you give when she doubts herself. It's in the patience you show when she struggles. It's in the celebration of her victories, not out of obligation, but out of genuine joy in her success. Those actions are remembered far more than any fleeting compliment, because they prove something deeper. They prove she is a priority, not an afterthought. Making a woman feel valued and loved also means creating space where she feels safe to be fully herself, safe to be vulnerable without fear of judgment, safe to speak her truth without dismissal, safe to dream without being told she's unrealistic. That kind of emotional environment doesn't happen by accident. It's cultivated. It requires intention. And when a man creates that kind of space, it leaves an indelible mark. She remembers not just that he loved her, but that he gave her the freedom to be fully who she was. The truth is, anyone can say, "I love you." Anyone can claim to care. But the men women never forget are the ones who lived those words through consistent actions, through respect, through kindness, through integrity, through strength and gentleness combined. When all of those qualities converge into a steady rhythm of making her feel valued and loved, the memory of that man becomes permanent. Because love is not just a feeling, it's a legacy you leave in the heart of another. And in the end, it's not the loud declarations or dramatic gestures that matter most. It's the quiet constancy, the unwavering presence, the everyday ways you remind her she is treasured. That is what makes her feel valued. That is what makes her feel loved. And that is what she will never, ever forget. At the end of it all, what truly lingers in a woman's heart is not the fleeting charm, not the superficial gestures, but the consistent pattern of who you chose to be. When you show up with reliability, when you respect her in ways that affirm her humanity, when your kindness is sincere and steady, when your strength is balanced with gentleness, when your integrity remains unshaken, and when you make her feel deeply valued and loved, you carve out a place in her memory that time cannot erase. These are not tricks. They are not strategies to win favor. They are the marks of a man who has chosen to live with character, with depth, and with purpose. And it is that kind of man, a man who embodies these principles, that a woman never forgets, because he didn't just pass through her life. He left it better than he found it,